Let's talk about social media. We have to, right? There's this huge question hanging over all of us. Is it making us miserable? Or could it actually be making us happier? Now, the easy answer seems obvious, but what the science has to say about it? Well, it's a way more interesting story. So let's dive in. You've heard it a million times. I know I have. The more time you spend staring at a screen, the sadder you'll be. It just feels true. But is that really what's going on? When researchers actually started digging into the data, that whole simple story started to look, well, a little shaky. And this is the first big twist in the whole conversation. The thing that we've all been obsessing over, the thing we've been told to focus on, the clock, it turns out that's not really the problem at all. So you have all these researchers who've pulled together countless studies, trying to find that smoking gun. They're looking for a clear, scientific link between the sheer number of minutes and hours you spend on social media and how happy you say you are. And the result they found? Negligible. Yeah, basically nothing. For most people, the amount of time you spend scrolling has almost zero power to predict your overall happiness. It's a pretty wild finding, and it completely flips the script on the usual advice we get. Okay, so if it's not about time, then what is it about? Well, the research points away from the screen and looks inward instead. It turns out things like your own self-esteem, how you feel about yourself before you even open the app, have a much, much stronger connection to your happiness. And we're not talking about a weak link here. That connection is medium to strong. Think about that. Your pre-existing self-esteem is a way better predictor of your well-being than how many hours you clock on Instagram or TikTok. The crucial takeaway is that how you feel about you is way more important than what you do on your phone. And this chart just lays it out so clearly. Look at time spent and use frequency, down there at negligible. But then look at perceived social support, and especially self-esteem. Those have a real measurable impact. This tells us social media isn't necessarily the source of the sadness. For a lot of us, it's just an amplifier for how we're already feeling. So if it's not how long we're online, that leads to the next big question, right? Does it matter how we're using that time? And the answer to that is a huge, resounding yes. This is where we see a major split. The research breaks it down into two main types of behavior. You've got active use. That's when you're actually engaging. You're messaging friends, you're creating a post, you're commenting, you're part of the conversation. And then you have passive use, which is just scrolling. You're a spectator, just consuming what everyone else is doing. These two things could not be more different in how they affect our brains. And this is where the trouble really starts. That passive scrolling can kick off this really nasty little cycle. You start mindlessly flipping through these perfectly curated feeds, which almost automatically triggers something called upward social comparison, which then leads to a dip in your self-esteem and your mood. Upward social comparison sounds super academic, but it's a feeling we all know. It's when you're sitting there in your pajamas, comparing your messy, everyday life to someone else's perfectly filtered, vacation-filled highlight reel. You're comparing your reality to their performance. And that's a comparison you can never, ever win. It's almost guaranteed to make you feel less than. So that brings up a really important question. If just scrolling can make us feel so crummy, why on earth is it so hard to just stop? Turns out, it's not about a lack of willpower. It's about the design of the machine itself. These platforms are built to keep you pulling the lever. And the engine driving that machine is something called intermittent reinforcement. It's the exact same psychological principle that makes slot machines in Vegas so addictive. You never know when you're going to get a reward, a like, a comment, a share. It's unpredictable, and that unpredictability triggers a little hit of dopamine in your brain, the pleasure chemical, that makes you want to keep scrolling to get another one. And here's a really key insight from the research. When that engagement crosses the line into something problematic or addictive, it actually cancels out all the potential good parts. The social connection, the support, all that gets wiped out, and the whole platform can just become a steady source of anxiety. And the cost of that problematic use is very real. We're talking about things that are consistently linked in the data. Poor sleep, higher levels of anxiety and depression, just feeling mentally drained all the time, and, you guessed it, lower self-esteem. It becomes this vicious cycle that just feeds on itself. Okay, so that's the problem, and it's a big one. But the good news is the science also shows us a way out. And for most people, the answer isn't to just delete everything and go live in a cabin. It's about learning how to use these tools better.
It's about building up your digital defenses.
For instance, one major study found something incredibly specific and powerful. They had a group of students limit their social media use to just 30 minutes a day, and the results were amazing. That group saw big drops in both loneliness and depression compared to the group that just kept using it as normal. It just goes to show that a conscious boundary can make a huge difference.
But let's be really clear here. The solution isn't just about less time, it's about better time. The whole goal is to build what experts call digital resilience. That's just the skill of being able to use these powerful tools in a way that actually helps you, instead of letting the tools use you.
So what does that look like? Well, here are a few strategies that are actually backed by research. Setting time limits, like we just talked about, disabling push notifications to break that addictive slot machine cycle, but maybe the most important one is to consciously shift your behavior toward active use. Prioritize direct messages and meaningful conversations, because that's what builds the real social support that actually leads to happiness. So in the end, when you strip it all away, the research is pretty clear. Social media isn't some evil monster. And it's not a magic cure for loneliness. It's a tool, a really, really powerful tool. And so the real question isn't whether the tool is good or bad. The question is, how are you going to choose to use it?